floating at the same time on that other surface between here and far away, between then and now. Floating, she said aloud, on the surface between the real and the imagined, between what comes to us from the outside and what comes to us from within, from deep, deep down in here, into a living peace all the more profound, all the richer and stronger and more complete, because it knows all your pain and unhappiness, knows them and takes them into itself and makes them one with its own substance. And it's into that peace that you're floating now, just asking this irresistible sleeping river of life to take me where it's going, and knowing all the time that where it's going is where I want to go, where I have to go, into more life, into living peace, along the sleeping river, irresistibly into the wholeness of reconciliation. That surface upon which Aldous Huxley's character Will Farnaby describes to be floating on, between then and now, the real and imagined, and what is outside us and within us, is an in-between state, or in Tibetan terms, a bardo. And like a flowing river, all sentient beings pass through bardos in life and death, where each entered bardo exists as a totality of one's own consciousness, everything from one's joys and karma to their pain and unhappiness, as Huxley's character Will described. In flowing through these bardos along the continuous stream of life, one's goal is to find peace in them through compassion and the reconciliation of the self, in hopes to one day realize the ultimate liberation from cyclical existence. And though the end of the path may seem clear, how to live to find the path towards this liberation may not. It is the Tibetan Book of the Dead, or in Tibetan, the Bardo Todro Chenmo, that offers its hand in helping direct one's consciousness through the bardos of life and death as a comprehensive guide to both living and dying. Thus the understanding, daily practice, and application of this very special text at the time of death acts as a key to unlocking the way to the ultimate liberation. And as is crucial to the understanding of all things, knowing this text's origins and how it came to be known is a vital element for a better understanding of this text as a whole. To set a foundation for a sound understanding of this text, knowledge of its meaning ought to be derived. The Bardo Todro Chenmo is translated into English as the Great Liberation by Hearing in the Intermediate States, and is commonly referred to as the Bardo. This text came to be known to the West through its first publication, which was edited by W. Y. Evans Wentz in 1927. In it, he branded the English version of the Bardo the Tibetan Book of the Dead, based on some similarities he saw between it and the Egyptian Book of the Dead. This first translation consisted solely of one chapter in the book called the Bardo Todro, which is translated as the Great Liberation by Hearing, and contains the Tibetan scriptures that are read to the individual at the time of death, and thus are the origins of how the Bardo came to the West. However, in Tibet, where Evans Wentz brought the book back from, the story of its beginnings is rooted much more deeply. In Tibet, it is said that the great Indian Tantran Padmasambhava, who was proclaimed to be the one to bring Buddhism to the country in the 8th century, is the author of the Bardo. The story goes that the first person to receive his comprehensive teaching of the Bardo was the Tibetan king Trisang Detsen. Nonetheless, the lineage of this teaching abruptly stopped due to Padmasambhava's visions of the future, where he saw the oral transmission of his teachings becoming corrupted. This resulted in him hiding a large number of treasure teachings in the form of books and artifacts which he believed would be discovered by the right person. Among these treasure teachings, the most elaborate of them was discovered by Karmalingpa in the 14th century, entitled The Natural Liberation to the Recognition of Enlightened Intention. This grouping of texts, supposedly found by Karmalingpa, is what came to be known as the Bardo Todro Chenmo, or the Tibetan Book of the Dead, outside of Tibet. However, contrary to the Tibetan legend, scholarly beliefs bear evidence that it was not solely created by Padmasambhava, but rather a group of authors over several centuries, where most of the writings date from the 14th and 15th century. As a result, its origins are considered to be Nyingma literature, since the Nyingma school is the oldest school in Tibetan Buddhism. The Nyingma school's early writings are based on Sanskrit translations from a 26-volume set known as the Collected Tantras of the Nyingmapa. It can be seen that the Bardo symbolism and iconography are derived from the most influential text among the 26 volumes, which is called the Guhyagarbha Tantra. This text then gave rise to the genre of Tibetan literature known as the Cycles of the Peaceful and Wrathful Deities, which presents the 100 peaceful and wrathful deities that manifest themselves in the Bardo of Death, as explained in the full compilation of the Bardo. The Bardo in its full form possesses a total of 6 intermediate states that the consciousness will pass through during life and death. It then goes into detail in regards to each state, explaining the state and how to exist and pass through it in a way that will eventually help direct the individual towards liberation. The first 3 Bardos mentioned in the book are the life Bardos, the first of which is the Rongjim Bardo, which is our waking, living state that constitutes the time of life until death. The Samtam Bardo is the second state, which involves meditative practice and concentration. It provides opportunity for the given individual to cultivate meditative balance, thus allowing them to reach stability in the generation and perfection stages of meditation. This Bardo deepens the awareness of the ultimate nature of mind and prepares the meditator for the Shikai or Death Bardo. The next addressed Bardo is the Milam Bardo, or Dreaming Bardo. It takes place from the moment one falls asleep till they awaken, wherein this state gives the individual the ability to realize the similarity between the illusory nature of dreams and actual reality. Also, the practice of dream yoga is advised, where the practitioner learns to maintain the ultimate nature of mind and phenomena while they are asleep and dreaming. Thus, the Rongjim Bardo, the Samtam Bardo, and the Milam Bardo are the 3 Bardos that one passes throughout life until the time of death. At the time of death, the 4th Bardo to be mentioned takes hold and is known as the Shikai Bardo. It is entered at the time when the process of dying begins without question and ends with the onset of the Bardo of experiencing reality, or the Chuni Bardo. Here, the gradual dissolution of the 5 elements begins. Earth turns into water, water to fire, fire to air, air to consciousness, and consciousness turns to the luminosity, or visions of pure white light that rises from the direct experience of one's own nature. This natural rising of inner radiance happens immediately after the being stops respiration. Here, a Lama will be reading the Bardo to the dead individual in hopes to direct them towards the light so that they can achieve freedom from all existences and Bardos at this opportune time with good karma, a calm sense of peace and truth, and taking to heart the teachings that the Lama is reciting at this time, such as, O child of Buddha nature, listen. Pure inner radiance, reality itself, is now arising before you. Recognize it. O child of Buddha nature, this radiant essence that is now your conscious awareness is a brilliant emptiness. If you recognize this brilliant essence of your own conscious awareness to be the Buddha nature, then to gaze into intrinsic awareness is to abide in the enlightened intention of all the Buddhas. If liberation and recognition of the clear light does not take place, then comes the onset of the Chuni Bardo, or Bardo of experiencing reality, which will occur in symbolic 7-day time periods until liberation, but no more than 49 days. If no womb is found for rebirth before the 49th day, the closest womb to what the individual would have been born into is chosen for the individual. This Bardo arises after the Shikai Bardo and ends before the Sibe or Life Bardo. In it, the individual begins to experience the surroundings where they died, in experiential states which are powered by the individual's past actions. Based on the practices during one's lifetime, the opportunity to recognize the natural purity and natural transformative qualities of the ultimate nature of mind occurs in the form of luminosities, rays, sounds, and meditational deities noted by visions of various Buddha forms and the 42 peaceful deities which come from the heart and 58 wrathful from the brain. These states are karmically impelled visions that are extremely intense and real, but are solely a creation of the individual's own consciousness. During this period, the Lama works to help prepare the individual to find a favorable rebirth by helping them let go of fear so that the peaceful deities do not turn to the wrathful ones. The Lama will do this by reciting the bardo and explaining the lights they will encounter, and offer encouragement such as, "Do not be afraid, do not turn away." Recognize these sounds and luminosities to be the naturally expressive power of your own awareness, manifesting naturally, where they will further explain to not be attracted to or cling to the lights of the lesser realms so that the individual can escape rebirth into them. After the Chini bardo has ended, the Sibe bardo, or bardo of rebirth, begins. The consciousness has heightened qualities at this level. Thus there is potential to reach liberation or achieve a more favorable state of rebirth during this state. If liberation from cyclic existence does not come at this state, where there is a final chance for it, the individual then seeks to end their suffering by being reborn. They are said to be driven by winds of hope and fear, where rebirth is seen as relief, and often any rebirth seems better than their current anguish. Thus, as the individual's conscience wanders the world, it is inclined to take the first rebirth possible. So, the bardo is read to the individual's consciousness, in hopes that it does not become distracted and hears the teachings so that it can find a human womb for rebirth. As the 6 bardos are presented to the individual, the Lama will recite the bardo to their consciousness to warn them of the animal, hungry ghost, God, demigod, and hell realms, saying, "Do not be drawn towards this place. Call to mind the methods of reversal and apply these. Be courageous and strong." They will also warn the consciousness of a human birth in the West, where there are abundant resources, and the East, where it is happy and tranquil. But since the sacred teachings for liberation do not flourish in these places, they encourage them to steer away to where the teachings do exist. On the southern continent, the Lama will say, "If indeed you can enter here, do so." And though the Lama will try to encourage the individual towards a womb where teachings of the bardo exist, in the end, it will be based on the individual's karma, altruistic intentions, and the amount of faith they put into these teachings, the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, or lack thereof, which will result in which realm the consciousness finds the entrance for rebirth. Once the consciousness enters the womb, the Sibe bardo ends and the life bardos ensue. Once again, if rebirth has taken place as a human. But this rebirth, no matter the realm, is the mark of samsara and the inscrutable torments of living and dying, upon which it is the consciousness's aim to seek liberation if they are fortunate to be reborn a human, or hope to be reborn a human if they end up in any of the other 5 realms, so that they have the chance to continue their quest for liberation. Thus, the 6 bardos are the classification of the 6 types of consciousnesses, where each state forms an intermediate state between other states of consciousness. It is through taking to heart and practicing the teachings offered in the bardo during both death and life that all beings can hope to mindfully pass through these 6 stages. And thus, through the commitment and faith in the bardo, it can be one's hope to one day find the key to the great liberation from the thought of the incomprehensible sequence of changes and chances that make up a life, all the beauties and horrors and absurdities whose conjunctions create the uninterpretable and yet divinely significant pattern of human destiny.